name's Emily, for those of you who don't know, and this is Brandy and Alfalfa. And welcome back. So today, I hope all of you know, or at least most of you, know about the Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark series. It came out in the 80s and 90s, and I was a 2000s kid, and they were in my library. So I ended up reading them when I was probably like 4th, 5th, 6th grade, and they terrified me. I don't know if that happened to any of y'all, but Brandy never read them. So as adults, I'm going to read a couple of them for her, and we're going to see how she reacts. So the first one I'm going to read is The Big Toe. This was the first one, like the first story in the first book. Okay. So this is the picture that comes with it. Okay. One day, a boy was digging up in his garden when he saw a big toe sticking out of the ground. He tried to pick it up, but it was stuck. It wouldn't budge, so he pulled as hard as he could and it came off in his hand. He heard something groan and scamper away. The boy took the big toe into the kitchen and showed it to his mom. "That looks like a nice piece of meat," she said. "I'll put it in the soup and we can have it for dinner." That night at the dinner table, the boy's father scooped the big toe out of the soup and chopped it up into 3 pieces. The father, the mother, and the boy each ate a piece. Then they did the dishes, and when it got dark, they went to bed. The boy fell asleep almost at once. But in the middle of the night, he was rudely awakened by a strange sound. He would listen closely. It sounded like there was a voice coming from outside its window, and it was calling to him. "Where's my big toe?" it groaned. And when the boy heard that, he got very scared. But he thought, "It doesn't know where I am. It will never find me." Then he heard the voice once more. Now it was closer. "Where is my big toe?" it groaned. The boy pulled the blankets over his head and closed his eyes. "I'll go to sleep," he thought. "When I wake up, it will be gone." But soon he heard the back door open, and again he heard the voice. "Where is my big toe?" it groaned. Then the boy heard footsteps move through the kitchen, into the dining room, into the living room, and into the front hall. They slowly climbed the stairs. Closer and closer they came. Soon they were in the upstairs hall. Now they were outside his door. "Where is my big toe?" the voice groaned. The boy watched in horror as his bedroom door opened. Shaking with fear, he threw his bedclothes over his head and listened as the footsteps slowly moved the dark towards his bed. Then they stopped. "Where is my big toe?" the voice groaned. "You got it!" How do you feel?
I have a lot of questions, honestly.
Yeah.
Can I tell them?
Yeah, tell them.
Okay, so my first question is like, what is this thing? Is it like a dead person? Is it like, you don't know? Okay.
No. There is an alternate ending. When the boy hears a voice calling for its toe, he finds a strange-looking creature up inside the chimney. The boy is so frightened he can't move. He just stands there and stares at it. Finally, he asks, "What you got such big eyes for?" The creature answers, "To look you through and through." "What you got such big claws for?" "To scratch up your grave." "What you got such a big mouth for?" "To swallow you whole." "What you got such sharp teeth for?" "To chop your bones."
Wow. That was intense. Okay, so my thing is like, clearly these people are cannibals if they're gonna like go out and eat like a dead person's big toe. And it either has to be like super big or they're like little tiny people, because they're splitting it between 3 of them. Okay, my next thing, this thing like picks this boy's room out of this entire house all the way up the stairs without a toe. That's the room he picks to go in. Like,
The boy pulled his toe off.
I know, but that doesn't mean like they know exactly what room that they live in. Like, he could have ended up in a closet. Like,
I don't know. Okay, this one's called Burning Feet. Okay, so this is the picture.
oh, okay.
There was a wealthy man who loved hunting. He decided to go on a trip to a remote part of northern Canada. It was a forsaken and desolate part of the country, and few people ever ventured that far north. Even fewer went there to hunt. He traveled to a trading post and tried to find a guide. He asked around, but no one he spoke to would agree to take him. They said it was all too dangerous. Eventually, he was put in touch with a stocky Cajun man by the name of Defago. Defago? Defago. That's what I'm going to call him. The man seemed to know a lot about trapping, Indian lore, and how to survive in the wilderness, and the hunter thought he would make an excellent guide. Defago was badly in need of money and agreed to take the hunter out to the best hunting grounds. They set out together, paddling down the river in a small canoe. When they reached their destination, the men set up camp near a large frozen lake. As far as the eye could see, the ground was covered in a thick blanket of snow. The hunter was enchanted by its beauty. He enjoyed the sense of freedom it gave him. For 3 days they hunted on the icy plains. They had nothing to show for it. Luckily, Defago taught him how to break a hole in the ice and catch some fish. They didn't go hungry. The hunter was glad he had chosen to bring a guide. He knew that the only thing that lay between him and starvation was Defago. The third night, a windstorm came up. They lay in their tent listening to the wind howling and the trees whipping back and forth. To see the storm better, the hunter opened the tent flap. What he saw startled him. There wasn't a breath of air stirring, and the trees were staying perfectly still. Yeah, he could still hear the wind howling. And the more he listened, the more it started to sound like it was calling Defago's name. Defago, it seemed to be calling. Defago! I must be losing my mind, the hunter thought. When he closed the tent flap and turned around, he saw that Defago had gotten out of his sleeping bag and was huddled in a corner of the tent, his head buried in his arms. What's wrong? The hunter asked. It's nothing, Defago said. Just the wind playing tricks on your ears. Though the voice that's carried on the winds continued to call his name. It sounded oddly seductive and sweet, and Defago became more tense and nervous. Defago, it called. Defago! The Cajun man flew into a panic and jumped to his feet. His eyes were wild and he was trembling. He pulled back the flap of the tent and was about to get out when the hunter grabbed him by the arm. Where are you going? The hunter shouted. You can't leave me here alone. How will I? Suddenly he was interrupted by a tremendous roar of the wind coming across the lake. The trees overhead shook with the force of it, and the campfire flickered and threatened to go out. There was a tremendous rushing noise as something swept over the tent, almost lifting it off the ground. Defago was shaken with fear. All of a sudden, he broke loose and fled from the tent. The hunter watched as his guide ran off and was swallowed up by the darkness. The hunter could hear him screaming as he went. Over and over he cried, "Oh, my fiery feet, my burning feet of fire!" Then his voice faded away into the night and the wind calmed down again. At the first sign of daylight, the hunter followed Defago's tracks in the snow, and the trail led through the woods down towards the lake and out into the ice. But he noticed something strange. The footprints Defago had left became longer and longer. They were so long that no human could have made them, and it was as if something had helped him to hurry away. The hunter followed the tracks out into the middle of the lake, but that's where they disappeared. At first, he thought that Defago had fallen through the ice, but there wasn't any hole. And then he thought something that pulled him off the ice into the sky, but that made no sense. As he stood wondering what had happened before, the wind picked up again. Soon it was howling as it had the night before. Then he heard Defago's voice again. It was coming up from above, and he was screaming, "Oh, my fiery feet, my burning feet of fire!" But there was nothing to be seen. Now the hunter wanted to leave that place as fast as he could. He went back to the camp and packed. Then he left some food for Defago and started out. Weeks later, he reached a trading post and set out looking for Defago. He asked around, but none of the people had seen him. They told him that he told them what he had witnessed, but no one could explain what happened to Defago that night. One man took him aside and whispered, "Could it have been the Wendigo?" "Wendigo," replied the hunter. "What is that?" "They say it comes with the wind," says the old man. "It calls your name and tries to trick you. Once it has you in its clutches, it drags you along at a great speed until your feet are burned away. Then it drags you some more and burns away more of you than that. They say it carries you into the sky and drops you." That's a story I heard as a child, but it's an old Indian legend. Who knows if it's true? The following year, the hunter went back to the same area. He was buying supplies at the trading post again when he asked about his old guide, Defago. No one had seen hide or heard of him. The night fell, and as the hunter was sitting by the campfire, the darkness brought forth a strange figure of a man. He came in and sat far from the fire, where the light and the shadows mingled. The man had a blanket wrapped around him, and his hood was pulled down so low his face was hidden in the shadow. The hunter watched it for a while and thought there was something familiar about him. "Defago?" he asked. "Is that you?" The stranger didn't answer. "Is it you?" "It is you, isn't it, DeFago?" No answer. The hunter began to wonder if something was wrong, if the man needed help, but he couldn't see his face. "Are you all right?" he asked. No answer. "DeFago, can you just tell me what happened? Just a little, so I can help you." From underneath his hood, the stranger muttered something. His voice was low and breathless. "I seen that great big Wendigo thing," he whispered. The hunter wanted to get a look at DeFago. He wasn't sure if it was really him. He reached out and tugged at the man's hood. The hood fell back, the blanket dropped to the ground. The hunter screamed in horror. There was nothing underneath that blanket but a pile of ashes.
That's why I don't go camping.
I'm telling you, man, that one got me. That one, I did not like that one when I was a kid. Okay, last one, because this one, I remember distinctly how it went down. I couldn't remember that, I didn't remember like the specifics, but I remember exactly like how it ended, and I swear on everything, me and my family were like riding down the road, and it was probably like during fall, because there was a scarecrow on these people, like an old scary dilapidated scarecrow like in the front yard, and I actually had like a heart attack and I died.
Well, yeah.
And then I came back to life and I cried. And then I came back to life and I cried for an hour. Like, it was terrifying. Okay. When it got hot in the valley, Thomas and Alfred drove their cows up to a cool green pasture in the mountains to graze. Usually they stayed there with the cows for 2 months. Then they brought them down to the valley again. The work was easy enough, but oh, it was boring. All day the two men tended their cows. At night they went back to the tiny hut where they lived. They ate supper and worked in the garden and went to sleep. It was always the same. Then Thomas had the idea that changed everything. "Let's make a doll the size of a man," he said. "It would be fun to make, and we could put it in the garden to scare the birds." "It should look like Harold," Alfred said. Harold was a farmer they both hated. They made the doll out of old sacks stuffed with straw. They gave it a pointy nose like Harold's and tiny eyes like his. Then they added dark hair and a twisted frown. Of course, they also gave it Harold's name. Each morning on their way to the pasture, they tied Harold to a pole in the garden and stare away the birds. Each night they brought him back inside so that he wouldn't get ruined if it rained. When they were feeling playful, they would talk to him. One of them might say, "How are the vegetables growing today, Harold?" Then the other, making believe that he was Harold, would answer in a crazy voice, "Very slowly." Then they would both laugh, but not Harold. Whenever something went wrong, they took it out on Harold. They would curse at him, even kick or punch him. Sometimes one of them would take the food they were eating, which they were both sick of, and smear it on the doll's face. "How do you like that stew, Harold?" he would ask. "You better eat it, or else." Then the two men would howl with laughter. One night, after Thomas had wiped Harold's face with food, Harold grunted. "Did you hear that?" Alfred asked. "It was Harold," Thomas said. "I watched him when it happened. I can't believe it." "How could he grunt?" Alfred said. "He's just a sack of straw. It's not possible." "Let's throw him in the fire," Thomas said, "and that will be that." "Let's not do anything stupid," said Alfred. "We don't know what's going on. When we move the cows down, we'll leave him behind. For now, let's just keep an eye on him." So they left Harold sitting in the corner of the hut. They didn't talk to him or take him outside anymore. Now and then the dog grunted, but that was that. After a few days, they decided that there was nothing to be afraid of. Maybe a mouse or some insects had gotten inside Harold, and they were making those sounds. So Thomas and Alfred went back to their old ways. Each morning they put Harold out in the garden, and each night they brought him back into the hut. When they felt playful, they joked with him. When they felt mean, they treated him as badly as ever. The one night, Alfred noticed something that frightened him. "Harold is growing," he said. "I was thinking the same thing," Thomas said. "Maybe it's just our imagination," Alfred replied. "We have been up here on this mountain for too long." The next morning while they were eating, Harold stood up and walked out of the hut. He climbed up on the roof and trotted back and forth like a horse on its hind legs. All day and all night he trotted like that. In the morning, Harold climbed down and stood in a far corner of the pasture. The men had no idea what he would do next. They were afraid. They decided to take the cows down to the valley that same day. When they left, Harold was nowhere in sight. They felt as if they had escaped a great danger and began joking and singing. But when they had only gone a mile or two, they realized they had forgotten to bring the milking stools. Neither one wanted to go back for them, but the stools would cost a lot to replace. There really is nothing to be afraid of, they told one another. After all, what could a doll do? They drew
a lot. Have you never watched Annabelle?
That was a demon. That wasn't a doll.
It was in a doll's body.
They They drew straws to see which one would go back. It was Thomas. "I'll catch up with you," he said, and Alfred walked towards the valley. When Alfred came to a rise in the path, he looked back for Thomas. He did not see him anywhere, but he did see Harold. The doll was on the roof of the hut again, and as Alfred watched, Harold kneeled and stretched out a bloody skin to dry in the sun. Now that is terrifying.
Yeah.
That's what I remember reading when I was a kid. Not these little, like, toned down ones that I found on that website. No. Like, those were terrifying to me. How do you feel?
Well, I mean, I feel like this could have been a lot worse. Like, you really could have tried to, like, really scare me. So, I'm glad you didn't do that. But I felt like a lot of these stories had just, like, I don't know. There was just, like, things that just did not make sense and they didn't think it out.
Well, you're a very logical person.
I am a very logical person.
So,
It
you have to
bothers
have that
me.
suspension of disbelief when you're reading scary stories.
But I don't. I believe everything.
Okay.
So.
Alright, well, so those weren't very scary for you then.
I mean, like, if it was, like, a real life situation, yeah, I would have been really scared. But, like, I don't know. It was very, like, it wasn't even toned down. It was just not what I was expecting.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
I feel like when you're younger, everything is so
Yeah.
real. So that's probably why I had such a different experience than as an adult. Because they're still really twisted, but
Yeah, definitely.
that's not like how it was when you were a kid.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for watching this video. If you liked it, hit the like button. If you want to see more of me, possibly more of Brandy, click the subscribe button and hit the bell to be notified whenever I post a new video. So I love you guys. I hope you all have a great day.